The dust hung in the air like a burial shroud. Afghanistan, 3 in the morning. The kind of darkness that swallowed everything. Hope, sound, the difference between living and dying. Meredith Callahan lay in the rubble with her back pressed against what used to be a wall. Two Marines were bleeding out beside her. One had a severed femoral artery. The other couldn't breathe. Both would be dead in minutes without intervention. And in her hands, cold, heavy, impossibly familiar, was the M40A5 sniper rifle she had sworn never to touch. 6 years. 6 years of keeping a promise made at her father's grave. 6 years of saving lives instead of taking them. 6 years of being the healer, never the killer. The Taliban were closing in. She could hear their boots crunching over broken concrete. 50 yards, maybe less. They would find this position in 2 minutes. They would kill everyone inside. She had 30 seconds to decide. The rifle fit her shoulder like it had been made for her. Because in a way, it had been. Her father had trained her on weapons like this since she was 10 years old. He had made her into something she spent 6 years trying to forget. Through the scope, she could see them. 4 fighters moving in tactical formation. Professional, trained. The kind of men who had survived enough firefights to know what they were doing. Her finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. That was all it would take to break everything she had promised. The crosshairs settled on the lead man's center mass. And somewhere in the darkness of her mind, she heard her mother's voice at her father's funeral. Promise me, never pick up a weapon in war. Save lives. Don't take them. But she also heard her father. Healing and protecting Scout. They're both mercy. Sometimes you need both. The Taliban fighters were 30 yards out now. 20 seconds until they found the gap in the wall. 20 seconds until everyone died. Meredith made her choice. 15 years earlier, Sumner County, Kansas. The wheat fields stretched to the horizon like a golden ocean. The late afternoon sun painted everything in shades of amber and bronze. Somewhere in the distance, a red-tailed hawk circled lazily, riding the thermals that rose from the sun-baked earth. Meredith was 10 years old, and the rifle in her hands weighed more than she expected. Her father knelt beside her in the tall grass. Master Gunnery Sergeant Ethan Callahan, 42 years old, 3 combat deployments, a face weathered by sun and war, and the kind of patience that only came from understanding that some things couldn't be rushed. He was a big man, 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle earned through decades of military service, but his hands were gentle as he adjusted her grip on the rifle stock. Breathe slow, he said. His voice was Kansas wind, steady, warm, carrying the dust of 1,000 summer afternoons. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let your heartbeat become your metronome. Meredith tried. She really did. But the target, a steel silhouette 300 yards downrange, seemed impossibly far. It was barely visible against the golden backdrop of the wheat field. I can't even see it, Dad. You don't need to see it clearly. You need to feel it. He shifted closer, his shoulder touching hers. The rifle is an extension of your body. The bullet goes where you send it, not where you think it should go, where you know it will go. How do I know? That's what we're here to learn, Scout. Scout, the nickname he had given her when she was 5 years old, because she was always scouting ahead, always looking around the next corner, always seeing things before anyone else saw them. He said she had eyes like a hawk. Nothing escaped her notice. Now, he continued, feel the wind. It's coming from the east, maybe 5 miles per hour. At this distance, that's going to push your round about 2 inches to the left. So you need to aim 2 inches to the right. How do you know it's 5 miles per hour? Look at the grass. He pointed to the wheat field between them and the target. See how the tops are moving? That's a light breeze. 10 miles per hour would bend the stalks halfway over. 20 would lay them flat. You learn to read the wind like reading a book. Eventually, you don't even think about it. You just know. Meredith looked at the grass, watched the way it swayed, tried to feel what her father felt. Okay, she said. I think I understand. Good. Now, slow breath in, hold it at the top, let half of it out, and when you're ready, squeeze the trigger. Don't pull, don't jerk. Squeeze it like you're squeezing water from a sponge. Gentle, steady. Let the shot surprise you. She did everything he said, breathed in, held it, let half out, found the trigger, squeezed. The recoil surprised her. The sound was enormous, a sharp crack that echoed across the empty fields. She lost sight of the target for a moment. Where did it go? About 18 inches left of center. You overcompensated for the wind. He didn't sound disappointed. If anything, he sounded pleased. But your form was good. Your breathing was right. That's what matters at this stage. The accuracy will come with practice. Can I try again? You can try as many times as you want, Scout. That's how you learn. That's how you get better at anything. Repetition, practice, patience. She fired again. Closer this time, maybe 6 inches left. Better. You're learning to read yourself. When you pulled the trigger that time, you didn't flinch. You trusted the rifle. That's the hardest part for most people. Trusting the tool. Trusting themselves. Third shot. The steel silhouette rang like a bell, a clear, beautiful sound that carried across the Kansas plains. Meredith lowered the rifle, her hands shaking with something she didn't have words for. Excitement. Fear. The strange, electric feeling of discovering a part of herself she hadn't known existed. Her father smiled. It was a rare thing. Ethan Callahan didn't smile often. The Marines had trained most of the easy expressions out of him, but when he did smile, his whole face transformed. The hard lines softened. The distant look in his eyes warmed. "That's my girl," he said. "That's my Scout. Can we do it again tomorrow? Every day until you can do it in your sleep. Every day until the rifle feels like part of your hand. Every day until you can hit a target at 600 yards in a crosswind without thinking about it. Why is this so important, Dad? Mom says guns are dangerous." Ethan was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. "Guns are tools," he said finally, "like hammers or scalpels. They can build or destroy depending on who uses them and why. But there's something else, Scout. Something important." "What?" "Someday, somewhere, you might be in a situation where people you love are in danger. And when that moment comes, you'll have a choice. You can be helpless, or you can have the skills to protect them." He turned to look at her. "I'm not teaching you to kill, Scout. I'm teaching you to save. There's a difference, a big difference. And I hope you never have to learn what that difference feels like." She didn't understand then. She was 10 years old and death seemed like something that happened to other people. War was a word in history books. Combat was something her father talked about, but never explained in detail. But she remembered his words. She would remember them for the rest of her life. 4 years later, same field, different season. Snow covered the Kansas plains in a blanket of white. Meredith's breath came in visible puffs as she lay prone in the frozen grass, her eye pressed to the scope of her father's rifle. She was 14 now, taller, stronger, and she had spent 4 years learning everything her father could teach her. 612 yards, she said, reading the rangefinder. Wind from the northwest, maybe 8 miles per hour. Temperature is 23 degrees. Bullets going to fly a little faster in the cold air. Good, what's your adjustment? 18 MOA up for elevation. 2 MOA right for wind. She made the adjustments to the scope without looking away from the target. Her fingers knew the dials by touch now. Ready. Whenever you are. She fired. 600 yards away, a steel plate the size of a dinner plate rang with a clear, high note. Center mass, her father said, looking through the spotting scope. Maybe half an inch right of perfect center. Outstanding. Meredith worked the bolt, chambered another round, and fired again. Another hit, and another. 5 rounds, 5 hits, all within a 2-inch circle. "You're better than I was at your age," Ethan said. There was something in his voice that Meredith hadn't heard before. Pride, yes, but also something else. Something that sounded almost like concern. "Better than most snipers I've served with. You have a gift, Scout. You taught me. I taught you technique. The gift. That's something you were born with. The ability to slow everything down. To see the shot before you take it. To trust yourself completely in the moment of truth." He paused. "Most people spend 20 years trying to develop what you have naturally. Is that bad? No, it's not bad. It's just..." He trailed off, looking out at the frozen landscape. "It's a responsibility, a gift like this. It's not just for target shooting. It's not just for trophies and competitions. It's for something bigger. And someday you'll have to decide what you want to do with it. What do you mean? I mean that you could be one of the best shooters in the world if you wanted to be. Military, competition, whatever path you choose. But with skill like this comes weight. The weight of knowing what you can do. The weight of choosing when to do it and when not to. He reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your gift, Scout. That's your choice. But whatever you choose, don't waste it. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't hide from who you are. Meredith didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded. Now, her father said, his tone lightening, let's see if you can hit that target at 800 yards. I'll spot for you. She settled back into position, adjusting the scope for the longer distance. And for the next hour, she forgot about gifts and responsibilities and choices. There was only the rifle, the target, and the perfect stillness between heartbeats. 2 years later, the same Kansas farmhouse, a different world. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctor delivered the diagnosis in a sterile office with fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly dead already. Meredith sat between her parents, watching her father's face for any sign of fear. There was none. Ethan Callahan received his death sentence the same way he had received every other piece of information in his life, with quiet, careful assessment. His face didn't change. His breathing didn't quicken. He simply nodded once and asked the only question that mattered. How long? 6 months, maybe less. The tumor has already metastasized to the liver. We can try chemotherapy, but at this stage it's palliative. It might buy you a few extra weeks, but it won't change the outcome. 6 months, 180 days, 4,320 hours. Meredith did the math in her head because math was something she could control, something that made sense, something that didn't care about cancer or death or the unfairness of a universe that would take her father away. Her mother, Eleanor, said nothing, but her hand found Meredith's under the table and squeezed so hard that Meredith felt the bones shift. The next 6 months were the longest and shortest of Meredith's life. She watched her father, the strongest man she had ever known, the man who had carried a wounded Marine 2 miles through enemy territory, the man who had killed 6 men with a single rifle from over 1,000 yards to save 300 others, waste away to nothing. The cancer ate him from the inside. 70 pounds disappeared in the first 3 months. Then his hair, then his ability to walk, then his ability to eat solid food, but never his mind, never his clarity, never his ability to see straight through to the truth of things. She spent every possible moment with him, sitting by his bed when he was too weak to move, reading to him when his eyes couldn't focus on the pages, and talking, hours and hours of talking about everything and nothing. He told her stories he had never told before, about Beirut in 1983, when he had taken out an entire RPG team from 800 meters to save 300 Marines, about the weight of those kills and how he had learned to carry it, about the nightmares that still came sometimes, 20 years later, and how he had made peace with them. The rifle doesn't know good from evil, he said one night, his voice barely a whisper. The morphine drip clicked steadily beside his bed. It only knows physics, wind, distance, gravity. The morality that comes from the person behind the trigger. That's why training matters. That's why character matters. Because in the moment of truth, there's no time to debate right and wrong. You have to know in your bones what you're willing to do and why. How did you know? Meredith asked. In Beirut, how did you know it was right to take those shots? Because 300 men would have died if I didn't? Because I had the skill to save them? Because having the ability to act and choosing not to, that's a choice too. Sometimes doing nothing is the worst choice of all. He coughed, a wet rattling sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his ravaged chest. Listen to me, he said, grabbing her hand with fingers that felt like bird bones. I need to tell you something. Something important. Save your strength, Dad. Strength is for the living. I need to spend what I have left on you. He pulled her closer. His eyes, sunken now, shadowed by death, still held the same sharpness they always had. You're going to face a choice someday. Maybe soon. Maybe years from now. But it's coming. What choice? Whether to use what I gave you. Another cough. Your mother, she doesn't understand. She thinks the rifle is just a weapon, just death. But it's not, Scout. It can be mercy. It can be protection. It can save lives just as surely as any medicine. I don't understand. You will. His grip tightened. When the moment comes, don't let anyone make you choose between the person who heals and the person who protects. You can be both. You have to be both. That's what I trained you for. Dad, promise me, Scout. Promise me you won't waste the gift. She promised. She didn't know what she was promising, but she would have promised him anything in that moment. Anything to make the fear in his eyes go away. Anything to give him peace. He died 3 days later, just before dawn. The morning light was coming through the window, turning everything gold, and Meredith watched his chest rise one last time and not fall again. She held his hand until the warmth left it, and even then, she didn't let go. The funeral was full military honors, flags and rifles and uniforms, and a folded triangle of stars and stripes that a Marine in dress blues presented to Eleanor Callahan, with words that Meredith couldn't hear through the blood roaring in her ears. Taps played. A rifle salute cracked the morning air. 3 volleys, 7 rifles each. 21 shots total. The sound echoed across the Kansas cemetery, disturbing a flock of crows that rose from a nearby oak tree and circled overhead like dark omens. And then it was over. 21 years of service, 3 combat deployments, the Beirut mission that made him a legend. All of it reduced to a hole in the ground and a headstone that would weather and fade like everything else. The crowd dispersed slowly, Marines in dress uniforms, family members Meredith barely knew, neighbors from the surrounding farms who had watched her grow up. But one man lingered at the edge of the cemetery. Meredith noticed him because he stood differently than the others. Straighter, more alert, his eyes scanning the surroundings, even in this place of mourning. He wore civilian clothes, but everything about him screamed military. The way he held himself, the way his eyes never stopped moving. The economy of his movements, like a man who had learned to conserve energy for when it really mattered. Gunnery Sergeant Clayton Morrison, 42 years old, scout sniper, a face like granite and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He caught Meredith looking at him. For a moment, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Then he nodded once, slowly, and walked away. She didn't know who he was then. She wouldn't learn until years later that Morrison had been in Beirut with her father, that her father had saved his life with the 6th shot, the one that took out the RPG operator who had been about to destroy Morrison's position, that Morrison had carried that debt for 20 years and would carry it for 20 more. But something about that nod stayed with her, a message she couldn't decipher, a promise of something yet to come. At the graveside, after everyone else had left, Eleanor Callahan took her daughter's hand. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of fresh-turned earth and dying flowers. The Kansas sky was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened snow. I need you to promise me something, Eleanor said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were devastated, red-rimmed, swollen, ancient with grief. Something important. Anything, Mom. Promise me you'll never pick up a rifle in war. Promise me you'll save lives, not take them. Promise me you won't become... She couldn't finish, couldn't say what she really meant. Meredith understood anyway. Her mother had loved Ethan Callahan with everything she had, and she believed in her grief that the rifle had killed him just as surely as the cancer. That the years of combat, the weight of the lives he had taken, had eaten away at him until there was nothing left for the disease to destroy. It wasn't true. Meredith knew it wasn't true, but grief didn't care about truth. I promise, Meredith said. I'll be a healer, Mom. Never a killer. I'll save lives. That's all. Eleanor's shoulders sagged with relief. She pulled Meredith into a hug that felt like drowning. Behind them, unseen, the wind picked up again. And somewhere in that wind, Meredith could almost hear her father's voice, whispering words she wouldn't understand for years. Both hands, Scout. You'll need both hands. 4 months later, the towers fell. Meredith watched the coverage on the small television in the Kansas farmhouse kitchen. Watched the planes hit. Watched the buildings crumble. Watched 3,000 people die in the time it took to drink a cup of coffee. And something shifted inside her. Not toward violence, not toward revenge, but toward purpose. If there was evil in the world, and clearly there was, then good people needed to stand against it. Not with hatred, not with blind fury, but with skill, with dedication, with the willingness to do hard things for the right reasons. She enlisted the next week, not as a Marine, not as a sniper, as a hospital corpsman, a healer, someone who carried bandages instead of bullets. Her father's rifle went into a closet in the Kansas farmhouse, and there it stayed for 6 years. The promise was kept. Afghanistan, 2007. 6 years after her father's death, the C-130 cargo plane bucked through turbulence like a bull trying to throw its rider. Inside the cargo bay, 43 Marines and sailors sat strapped to canvas seats, swaying with each jolt. Hospital corpsman, second class, Meredith Callahan sat near the tail ramp, her medical kit between her boots. She was small, 5'3", 118 pounds. The kit weighed 68 pounds. She had carried versions of it through Ramadi, Marja, and Sangin. It had become part of her, like a second spine. 89 lives saved. 0 shots fired. That was her record. That was her promise kept. A Marine across from her was staring. Staff Sergeant Reyes, face like a clenched fist, eyes that moved too much. He had the look of a man who had been deployed too many times, who had seen too much and processed too little. "You the new doc?" Meredith nodded once. "You look 12. 24? Yeah." The Marine leaned forward slightly, his body armor creaking. "You ever see combat, Doc? Ramadi? Marja? Sangin?" The names sat between them like cards on a table. 3 of the bloodiest battlefields of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. 3 places where corpsmen had earned their reputation in blood. Meredith met his eyes, didn't blink, didn't flinch. The Marine studied her face for tells, found none, leaned back. "All right then," he said, almost respectfully. He didn't apologize, didn't need to. They'd all been tested this way. The loadmaster appeared, moving hand over hand along the cargo netting. "Callahan, Master Sergeant wants you up front." She unbuckled and made her way forward through the metal tunnel of the plane's interior. Marines tracked her movement with eyes that revealed nothing. She was used to it by now. The assessment, the skepticism, the silent question. Can this small woman really do the job when it matters? She had answered that question 89 times. She would answer it again tonight if she had to. At the front of the bay, 3 men stood around a map table bolted to the deck. The center figure was tall, thick-shouldered, with gray creeping through his high and tight. Master Sergeant Dominic Blackwood, call sign Gunner, team leader for Marine Force Recon Team Havoc. 43 years old, 21 years in service. A man who measured words like a sniper measured distance. Carefully, precisely, with full awareness of their impact. "Callahan," he said without looking up from the map, "you're with us now." "Yes, Master Sergeant. You replaced Corpsman Valdez. Good man. Took shrapnel to the femoral 3 weeks back. Medevaced. He'll live, but he's done." Meredith said nothing. "You didn't comment on other people's wounds." Blackwood finally looked up. His eyes were the color of old gunmetal. They traveled from her face to her boots and back again in one smooth, comprehensive assessment. "You're small." "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Can you hump that kit 15 clicks?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Can you work under fire?" "I have before, Master Sergeant." Something flickered in Blackwood's expression. Not quite approval, more like recalculation, the look of a man adjusting his assumptions. "We hit the ground in 4 hours," he continued. "Mission brief is simple. High-value informant wants to come over. Taliban commander's nephew. He's got intel on IED networks and weapons caches worth more than both our salaries combined. We go in, extract him, bring him out. In and out before the sun comes up." He tapped the map with 2 fingers. "Compound here, 6 structures. We expect 15 to 20 armed fighters. Maybe more. It's going to be loud." His eyes found hers again. "Your job is to stay in the rear. Keep your head down. If someone goes down, you patch them. That's it. No heroics. No John Wayne nonsense. You are a medic, not a rifleman. Understood?" Understood, Master Sergeant. Good. Meet the team. The two men beside Blackwood stepped forward. The first was built like a brick wall with legs, 6'2", 220, with hands that looked like they could crush walnuts. Staff Sergeant Roman Kowalski, call sign Brick, weapons specialist, face scarred from an RPG blast in Fallujah that had killed everyone else in his vehicle. Doc, Kowalski said. His voice was surprisingly soft for such a large man. No offense, but you look like you weigh about as much as my rifle. No offense taken, Staff Sergeant. You ever treat a sucking chest wound? Yes. How about a traumatic amputation? 3 times. Kowalski's eyebrows climbed slightly. Huh. He glanced at Blackwood. Okay then. The second man was leaner, older. Gunnery Sergeant Clayton Morrison, 46 years old, scout sniper. A man whose entire existence seemed calibrated for stillness. He didn't fidget, didn't shift his weight, stood like a statue that had learned to breathe. He didn't speak, just studied her with eyes that saw things other people missed. Then so quietly that only she could hear. Callahan. I knew that name once. Meredith's heart stopped for half a beat, but before she could respond, Blackwood was already moving on. You'll link up with the rest of the team on the ground. Questions? 1,000 questions. She asked none. No, Master Sergeant. Then get some rest. It's going to be a long night. She turned to go. Callahan, Morrison's voice stopped her. Walk with me. They moved to the rear of the cargo bay, near the ramp where the engine noise was loudest. Morrison stood with his back to the fuselage, his eyes scanning the Marines around them out of pure habit. Your father, he said. Ethan Callahan, scout sniper, Beirut. How did you... I was there. Morrison's voice was flat, matter of fact, the voice of a man stating simple truth. 24 years ago, ambush on the Marine barracks. We were pinned down, RPG team setting up to hit our position, 6 of them, well-trained, well-positioned. Your father was 800 meters out. Bad angle, crosswind gusting to 20 miles per hour. Worst conditions you could imagine for a precision shot. He paused. His eyes grew distant, seeing something that wasn't there. And he took them. All 6. 6 shots. 6 kills. In less than 30 seconds. Meredith felt the floor shift beneath her. She had known the story. Her father had told her pieces of it. But hearing it from someone who had been there was different. 300 Marines survived that day because of one man with a rifle. Morrison continued. I was one of them. Your father's 6th shot, that was the one that saved me. An RPG operator had me dead to rights. Already had the tube pointed at my position. And your father put a round through his eye at 800 meters in a gusting crosswind. He never talked about it much. Not the details. Men like your father never do. The weight of saving that many lives by taking others, that's not something you discuss at dinner. It's something you carry every day until you die. Why are you telling me this? Morrison's eyes met hers. Blue, cold, but not unkind. Because I was one of those 300 Marines. Because your father saved my life with his 6th shot. Because I've spent 24 years trying to repay that debt and never found a way. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass object. A rifle casing, tarnished with age. Worn smooth by years of handling. This is from that shot, the one that saved me. I've carried it every day since Beirut. 24 years, through every deployment, every mission, every firefight. He pressed it into her palm. I kept it because I always knew someday I'd find a way to repay what I owe. The brass was warm from his body heat. Meredith looked at it. 24 years of a man's life, carried in a piece of metal no bigger than her thumb. Tonight, Morrison continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, if things go sideways, and in this business, things always go sideways, I want you to know something. Whatever happens out there, I've got your back, every step, every second. Why? Because I made a promise to myself 24 years ago, lying in a hospital bed in Germany with shrapnel in my chest. I promised that if I ever found a way to repay your father, I would give everything I had. His eyes held hers. You're that way, Scout. You're his legacy, and I'll die before I let anything happen to you. The name hit her like a physical blow. Scout. Only 2 people had ever called her that. her father, and now this stranger who had carried her father's bullet casing for 24 years. "I'm not my father," she said quietly. "I made a promise to my mother. I don't shoot anymore." Morrison nodded slowly. "I understand promises, but sometimes the world doesn't care what we've promised. Sometimes it forces us to become what we need to be instead of what we want to be." He turned to go, paused, looked back. "Your father used to say something. 2 words. He said them before every mission, every shot, every moment that mattered. 'Both hands,'" Meredith whispered. "Both hands." Morrison nodded. "Healing and protecting. He said they were the same thing. Said someday you'd understand what that meant." Then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows of the cargo bay. Meredith stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of the brass casing in her palm, feeling the weight of everything it represented. She didn't know that in 12 hours, she would understand exactly what Morrison meant. The helicopter dropped them into darkness. Helmand Province, 0200 hours. The night was thick enough to drown in. No moon, no stars. Just the oppressive weight of an Afghan darkness that seemed to swallow everything: light, sound, hope. Meredith moved with the rest of Team Havoc, 20 meters behind the main element. Night vision turned the world into grainy green ghosts. Every rock was a potential threat. Every shadow could hold death. Her medical kit bumped against her hip with each step. 68 pounds of gauze, tourniquets, needles, and small miracles. 68 pounds of responsibility. The terrain was brutal. Loose rocks, steep grades, thorny bushes that grabbed at uniforms like skeletal fingers. The team moved in single file, each man stepping exactly where the man in front of him had stepped. In this part of Afghanistan, stepping wrong meant stepping on an IED. Ahead, Blackwood held up a fist. The column froze. Meredith went to one knee, scanning their 6. Behind them, the valley stretched empty and dark. In front, the compound waited. 6 buildings clustered together like broken teeth against the horizon. Mud walls, flat roofs, the kind of construction that had sheltered Afghan families for centuries and Taliban fighters for decades. Intel said their target was in the largest structure. Intel also said light resistance, 15 to 20 fighters. Intel had been wrong before. Blackwood's hand moved in signals. Teams split into 2 elements. Kowalski took 4 Marines left. Morrison and 3 more went right. Blackwood and the remainder straight up the middle. Meredith stayed where she was told. Rear position, safe as anywhere could be in a place like this. The teams moved forward like smoke. Silent, precise, the product of thousands of hours of training compressed into a few minutes of flawless execution. She counted heartbeats, controlled her breathing, listened to the radio chatter in her ear. Havoc 1 in position. Havoc 2 set. Havoc 3 ready. Blackwood's voice: execute, execute, execute. The night exploded. Flashbangs detonated with white-hot fury. Doors splintered under breaching charges. Shouts in Pashto and English tangled together. The sharp crack of M4 rifles. The deeper boom of AK-47s answering back. Meredith's world narrowed to radio traffic and muzzle flashes. Contact front. Room clear. Moving to structure 2. Tango down. 2 minutes. 3. 5. Then Kowalski's voice, tight with controlled urgency. Havoc 1, this is Havoc 2. We've got the package. Moving to rally point. Copy. All elements collapse on rally point Alpha. The firing slowed. Stopped. Silence rushed back in like water filling a hole. Meredith stood, ready to move. No casualties reported. Clean extraction, by the book. She allowed herself one small exhale of relief. That's when the secondary explosion tore the night apart. The blast wave hit like a physical thing. Meredith went down hard, ears ringing, vision white. Debris rained from the sky, chunks of mud, brick, pieces of things she didn't want to identify. Her radio was screaming, "Man down! Man down! Structure 3 collapsed! Havoc 3, report!" Morrison's voice, strained but controlled. "3's pinned. Hartley and Prewitt trapped in Structure 3. Buildings unstable. Can't reach them from our position." Blackwood. "Doc, get to Structure 3. Now." Meredith was already moving. She ran through smoke and dust, kit bouncing against her spine. Structure 3 looked like God had stepped on it. The roof was completely gone, collapsed into the interior. Two walls leaned at angles that defied physics. The remaining structure groaned with each gust of wind, threatening to collapse entirely at any moment. Somewhere in that wreckage were two Marines who needed her. She found the gap and squeezed through. Inside was darkness and the smell of cordite and copper. Dust hung in the air so thick she could taste it. Her weapon light cut through the haze, illuminating shapes that used to be furniture, walls, lives. Hartley? Prewitt? Here. The voice was weak, young, scared. Doc, we're here. Her weapon light found them. Corporal Beckett Hartley, 23 years old, from a small town outside Dallas, pressed against the far wall with his left leg bent at an angle that made Meredith's stomach clench. Compound fracture. The bone was visible through torn flesh. Blood pooled beneath him, black in the white light. And beside him, Lance Corporal Colton Prewitt, 19 years old, the youngest Marine in the unit, gasping like a fish on dry land, lips turning blue, chest wound, sucking, probably tension pneumothorax, both critical, both dying. I've got you, Meredith said. She dropped her kit and went to work. Hartley first. The blood pooling beneath him was too much for a simple fracture. She tore his pants open and found the real wound. Femoral artery severed by shrapnel. He was bleeding out. She had maybe 90 seconds before he was gone. Her hands moved without thought. Combat application tourniquet, high and tight above the wound. Crank the windlass. 1 turn, 2, 3, 4. Lock it down. The bleeding slowed to a trickle. Stay with me, Beck, she said. Calm, clinical, the voice of a woman who had done this before. You're going to be fine. Hartley's eyes found hers, glazed with shock, pupils dilated. Doc, I got a girl back home, Melissa. We're supposed to get married when I get back. Had the ring custom made. Been carrying it in my pocket for 3 months. You're going to make that wedding, I promise. She turned to Prewitt. His lips were past blue now, almost gray. Neck veins distended. Trachea deviated to the right. Classic signs. Tension pneumothorax. Air was trapped in his chest cavity, collapsing his lung, crushing his heart. Every breath made it worse. Every second without intervention brought him closer to death. She needed to decompress. Now. Meredith ripped open his shirt, found the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, the spot her instructors had made her practice 1,000 times on dummies and cadavers. She pulled the 14-gauge needle from her kit, and that's when the first rifle shot cracked overhead. She ducked instinctively. More shots followed. The staccato rhythm of AK-47s. Close. Too close. Her radio crackled. Blackwood's voice tight with controlled anger. Doc, we've got contact. Taliban QRF inbound from the north. At least 20 fighters, maybe more. Extraction delayed. I say again, extraction delayed. Then Morrison, urgent. Sniper, ridgeline east, 800 meters. A round punched through the wall 6 inches from Meredith's head. Concrete dust exploded across her face, filling her eyes and nose with grit. She didn't flinch, couldn't afford to. Her hand stayed steady on the needle. Hold still, Colt, she said. She drove the needle into Prewitt's chest. Air hissed out under pressure, a sound like a tire deflating. Prewitt gasped, coughed. His color started to return, gray fading to pale pink. Breathe, she told him, slow and steady. You're going to be okay. Outside, the gunfire intensified. She heard Kowalski shouting orders, heard the heavier bark of the squad automatic weapon returning fire, and above it all, the distinctive crack of a high-powered rifle. Not American. The sound was wrong. Too flat. Too far. The Taliban sniper was picking them apart. Morrison pressed himself against a broken wall, rounds cracking past his head. Close. Too close. Whoever was shooting at them knew exactly what they were doing. He knew that sound. He knew the rhythm of those shots. Precise. Patient. The work of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The shadow, he said into his radio. That's Khalid Nazari. I'd know his shooting anywhere. Blackwood's voice. You sure? He killed Jackson's entire squad in Kandahar last year. 12 Marines, 1 sniper. 47 confirmed kills over the last 5 years. Best shooter the Taliban has. Maybe the best in the entire country. Can you get a shot? Morrison looked at his angle. The ridge was 800 meters east. The sniper, Khalid, was in a natural hide, nearly invisible against the dark rocks. Morrison would have to expose himself to get a clean shot, and by the time he did, Khalid would already have him. Negative, he's got the angle. I move, I'm dead. Another crack. A Marine screamed somewhere in the darkness. Someone else was down. We need to suppress that position, Blackwood said. Otherwise, we're not getting out of here. But there was no way to suppress a sniper at that range. Not with the weapons they had, not from their positions. Not unless... Morrison keyed his radio to the channel he shared with Meredith. Doc, you still have Hartley's rifle? Inside the collapsed structure, Meredith froze. She looked at the weapon half buried in the rubble beside Hartley, his M40A5 sniper rifle, the weapon he had carried into this compound. It had been thrown clear when the building collapsed, landing just a few feet from where she was working. 30 pounds of steel and wood and glass, a tool designed for one purpose. Doc, Morrison's voice said in her ear, I know what you promised. I know what you told me on the plane. But we're pinned. Khalid has us dead to rights. Every minute we stay here, more people die. Another crack from the ridge. Another scream on the radio. You're the only one with the angle, Morrison continued. From your position, you can see the ridge. I can't. Kowalski can't. No one else can. You're our only chance. I'm a medic, Meredith said. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. I don't... 680 meters. Wind from the east-southeast, 12 miles per hour. You adjust 3.5 MOA left, 11 MOA up. That's the shot. The numbers hung in the air. The same numbers her father had taught her. The same calculations she had done 10,000 times on the Kansas range. I can't leave them, she said, looking at Hartley and Prewitt. If you don't take that shot, none of us are leaving. That gun team is going to pin us here until the Taliban brings up RPGs. Then it's over. For all of us. Meredith's hands started to shake. Hartley's eyes opened. He had heard everything through the radio. Doc, he whispered, take the rifle, save them. I promised my mother. You promised to keep us alive. His voice was stronger now. That's what you're doing. Morrison's voice again, quieter now. Scout, your father would know what to do. The name hit her like a bullet. Scout. Only 2 people had ever called her that. Her father, and now Morrison, the man her father had saved 24 years ago in Beirut. She looked at Hartley, at Prewitt, at 2 young men who trusted her to keep them alive. Then she looked at the rifle. Her hand reached out, touched cold steel, pulled the weapon toward her. The M40A5 settled into her shoulder like coming home. 6 years. 6 years since she had held a rifle like this. 6 years since she had looked through a scope. 6 years since she had put her finger on a trigger. But muscle memory didn't care about time. Her body remembered every position, every adjustment, every breath. The thousands of hours of practice on the Kansas range came flooding back like water through a broken dam. Meredith found the gap in the rubble that gave her a sight line to the eastern ridge. She went prone, pulled the rifle tight against her shoulder, pressed her cheek against the stock. Through the scope, the world compressed into a circle of green-tinted darkness. She swept the sight picture across the ridgeline. Rocks, shadows, the faint disturbance of someone who had dug in. There, a shape that didn't quite fit, the outline of a head, the glint of glass, another scope. Khalid Nazari, the shadow, 47 kills, the best sniper the Taliban had, and he was looking right at her. For one frozen moment, they saw each other. 2 snipers across 680 meters of darkness. 2 people who had dedicated their lives to hitting targets at impossible distances. She could see his face through the magnification. Dark beard, hard eyes, a scar running from his temple to his jaw. The face of a man who had killed 47 times and planned to kill again. Then Meredith fired. The rifle punched her shoulder. The sound was enormous, a physical force that made Hartley flinch and Prewitt gasp. Through the scope, she watched the bullet arc through the night, saw the flight time stretch, almost 2 full seconds at this distance. She missed, 4 inches left. The bullet sparked off the rock beside Khalid's head. He didn't even flinch, didn't move, didn't break position. He had heard thousands of near misses in his career. He knew the difference between close and dead. Meredith worked the bolt, smooth, automatic. Muscle memory from 1,000 repetitions on a Kansas range when she was 14 years old. Morrison's voice in her ear. Wind picked up, 14 miles per hour now. Adjust 4 MOA left. She adjusted. Her hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. There was only the scope, the target, and the space between heartbeats. Khalid was tracking her muzzle flash, adjusting his own aim. In 3 seconds, he would fire. In 3 seconds, she would be dead. She had one chance. Slow breath in, even slower out. Heart rate dropping. 90 beats per minute. 80, 70, 65. The crosshair settled on center mass. She fired. Through the scope, she saw the impact. The way Khalid's body jerked. The way he twisted sideways. The way he tumbled backward off the ridge. But something was wrong. He didn't fall the way a dead man falls. He caught himself, twisted, disappeared behind the rocks. Hit, Morrison's voice said. Upper right shoulder. He's wounded but mobile. He's still alive? Affirmative. He's pulling back. The radio crackled with Taliban chatter, rapid Pashto, angry voices. Morrison's face went pale as he listened. They're saying the shadow is hit, shoulder wound, serious but not fatal. He's ordering them to mark the muzzle flash position. He's memorizing our location. Another burst of angry voices over the radio. He's saying he saw the shooter through his scope. Small build, moving like a medic, not a soldier. Morrison's voice dropped. He knows it was a woman. He's telling them that a woman nearly killed the shadow. What else? He's swearing an oath. On his father's grave. On his family's honor. Morrison paused. He's saying he will find the woman who shot him. That he will put 7 bullets in her, 1 for every year of his reputation she just destroyed. That he will not rest until she's dead. Meredith felt the cold spread through her chest like poison. She had wounded the shadow. She had humiliated him. And in doing so, she had created an enemy who would hunt her to the ends of the earth. The rifle in her hands suddenly felt very heavy. We need to move, Morrison said. Now, before he gets into another position. The next 40 minutes were chaos. With their sniper wounded, the Taliban pressed forward with everything they had. 30 fighters, maybe more. They came in waves, professional and coordinated, trying to overwhelm the American position through sheer numbers. Meredith worked both roles. When someone needed patching, she was a medic. When someone needed shooting, she was a marksman. 4 more shots, 4 more hits. Each one easier than the last. Each one another piece of her promise crumbling away. Morrison appeared beside her between waves. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were calm. Your father called it both hands, he said. Right hand heals, left hand protects. Same mission, same purpose. I'm breaking everything I promised my mother. No, you're becoming what you were always meant to be, what your father trained you to be. Before she could respond, Blackwood's voice cut through the radio. Bird inbound, 2 minutes, prepare for extraction. The Black Hawk appeared over the ridge like a metal angel, door guns blazing, tracers cutting through the darkness like angry red stars. The Taliban scattered. Litter teams burst through the gap. They loaded Hartley first, then Prewitt, both alive, both stable, both going to make it because Meredith had done her job. Both jobs. Doc, you're up, Morrison shouted. Meredith grabbed her medical kit and ran for the helicopter. She was 10 feet from the ramp when the first bullet hit her. She didn't feel it at first, just pressure, like someone punching her right shoulder hard enough to spin her halfway around, then fire. She looked down, saw the dark stains spreading across her uniform just below her right collarbone. The second round hit her left side. She felt ribs crack, felt something wet spreading beneath her body armor. The third and fourth caught her left thigh in rapid succession. Her legs started to buckle. The fifth punched into her abdomen. She felt it tear through muscle and lodge somewhere deep. She tried to stay standing, tried to reach for the helicopter ramp, tried to keep moving. The sixth round hit her right calf. Her legs gave out completely. She fell. The seventh bullet caught her left shoulder as she hit the ground. Through the red haze of pain, she saw something impossible. A figure on the ridge, 800 meters out, standing now, not hiding. A rifle against his shoulder, shoulder wrapped in bloody bandages. Khalid Nazari, the shadow, the man she had wounded. He had dragged himself back into position. He had waited for her to expose herself, and he had taken his revenge. 7 bullets, one for every year of reputation she had cost him. The crew chief was on her immediately, hands moving with the same precision she had used on Hartley and Prewitt minutes before. "Stay with me, Doc. Stay with me." Morrison was there too. She could see his face through the closing tunnel of her vision. His hand found hers. "Both hands, Scout," he was saying. "You used both hands. You did good. You did so good." "Dad," she whispered. But it wasn't her father's face above her. It was Morrison's, the man her father had saved in Beirut, the man who had carried a brass casing for 24 years. He would be proud, Morrison said. God, he would be so proud. The helicopter lifted off. She could feel the G-forces, could hear the door gun still firing, Taliban rounds punching through the thin skin of the aircraft. Hartley's face appeared above her. He was crying. "Don't you die, Doc. Don't you dare die. You promised you'd get me home." "I did," she wanted to say. "I kept my promise. You're going home." But the darkness was closing in, warm, heavy, final. The last thing she heard was Morrison's voice, reciting words her father had said 1,000 times. "Both hands, a scout. Both hands. That's what your father taught you, and tonight you use them both." Then the darkness took her. The pain was the first thing that returned. It crept in slowly, a dull throb in her shoulder, sharp fire in her abdomen, a deep ache that seemed to radiate from her bones themselves. Meredith opened her eyes. White ceiling, fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell of a hospital trying to hide the underlying scent of blood and fear. She tried to move. Her body sent back a cascade of protests. Every muscle, every joint, every nerve ending screaming in unified rebellion. A face appeared above her. Older, kind, white coat, German accent. "Welcome back, Petty Officer Callahan. You're at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. You've been here for 6 days." "6 days? You were shot 7 times. The doctor pulled up a chair and settled in like a man who had delivered this speech before. "2 rounds in the right shoulder, 1 through your left side, cracked 2 ribs but missed the lung by 6 millimeters. 2 in your left thigh, 1 of which nicked the femoral artery. 1 in your abdomen that somehow avoided every major organ, and 1 in your right calf that shattered the fibula. 7 bullets. She had counted them as they hit. "The Marines?" she asked. "Hartley and Prewitt?" The doctor's expression softened. "Alive. Both of them. Your care kept them stable long enough to reach the surgical intervention. Corporal Hartley lost the leg below the knee, but he'll walk again with a prosthetic. Lance Corporal Prewitt is recovering well. Lung reinflated. No permanent damage." Meredith closed her eyes. Relief flooded through her, warm and overwhelming. They had made it. Both of them. "They've asked about you every day," the doctor continued. "The entire team has been asking. You seem to have made quite an impression. There's someone here to see you, if you're up for it." She nodded. Senior Chief Marcus Garrett appeared, the SEAL who had been coordinating the medevac. His face was harder than she remembered, the face of a man who had seen too much and processed too little. "Corpsman Callahan, I've been waiting 6 days to say this." "Say what?" "You saved 8 lives that night, 2 in the building, 6 more during the extraction. Marines who would have been killed if that sniper hadn't been suppressed." He paused. "What you did was extraordinary. I broke my promise. You kept the only promise that mattered, the one to bring your people home." Meredith said nothing. "There's something else," Garrett continued. "The sniper who shot you, Khalid Nazari, he survived. Taliban pulled him out before we could confirm the kill." "I know, I saw him. Right before he shot me. Intel says he's recovering somewhere in Pakistan. Shoulder wound was serious but not fatal. And he's put a price on your head. He's telling everyone that a woman shot him, that a medic nearly killed the shadow. Garrett's jaw tightened. He's making it personal. Very personal. Meredith absorbed this. Somewhere out there, a man was healing from the wounds she had given him, and when he healed, he would come for her. Get some rest, Garrett said. You've got a long recovery ahead. 3 days later, her mother called. Eleanor's voice was controlled. Too controlled. The voice of someone holding themselves together with willpower alone. The Navy contacted me. They told me you were wounded. I'm okay, Mom. 7 bullets, Meredith. 7. I'm alive. Silence stretched across the phone line, across the ocean, across 6 years of a promise that no longer existed. You used a rifle, Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. Yes. In combat, yes. More silence. Meredith could hear her mother breathing, could imagine her sitting in the Kansas farmhouse, looking out at the wheat fields where Ethan Callahan had taught his daughter to shoot. You promised me, Eleanor said finally, at your father's grave. You promised. I know. How could you? Meredith's eyes burned. Because 2 Marines were dying, because my team was pinned down, because a sniper was killing everyone, and I was the only one who could stop him. There had to be another way. There wasn't. There's always another way. No, Mom, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you have to choose between breaking a promise and watching people die. Meredith's voice cracked. I chose to save them. I'd make the same choice again. Eleanor was crying now. Meredith could hear it, the ragged breathing, the suppressed sobs. I need time, her mother said. Mom, I need time. The line went dead. Meredith stared at the ceiling until a nurse came to check her vitals. An hour later, there was a knock at her door. Morrison entered. He looked older than he had in Afghanistan. The lines around his eyes were deeper, but he carried himself with the same stillness, the same quiet competence. Heard you were awake, he said. Flew in this morning. You flew all the way to Germany? I owe your father my life. Making sure his daughter survived seemed like a fair way to start paying that back. He pulled up a chair. How are you feeling? Like I got shot 7 times. Funny. You look like it too. She almost laughed. Almost. Morrison's expression grew serious. You talked to your mother. How did you know? You've got that look, the one your father used to get when they fought about his deployments. They fought? All the time, every deployment. Your mother never understood why he kept going back, why he couldn't just teach marksmanship at some base in Virginia and come home every night for dinner like a normal husband. Morrison paused. She loved him more than anything, but she was afraid of what he was, afraid that the rifle would consume him. She blamed it for his death. I know she's wrong, but I understand why she feels that way. The cancer killed him, not the rifle. But grief doesn't care about logic. Grief needs something to blame. He leaned forward. Your father made peace with what he was long before he met your mother. He understood that sometimes the same hands that heal also have to protect. That's not a contradiction. That's completion. He said that to you? After Beirut, after he saved my life. I asked him how he could live with killing 6 men, and he said, I didn't kill 6 men. I saved 300. The 6 were the cost. Every life has a cost. The only question is whether you're willing to pay it. Meredith let the words settle. Your mother will come around, Morrison said. It took her 2 years to accept what your father did in Beirut. It might take her time again, but she'll get there. What if she doesn't? Then you'll know you did the right thing anyway. That's the hardest part of this life, Scout. Doing the right thing even when the people you love don't understand. The next 4 months were a study in controlled suffering. 5 surgeries, 3 bullets removed, 3 more too deep in scar tissue to extract safely. The doctors said she would set off metal detectors for the rest of her life. Physical therapy was worse than the surgeries. Relearning to walk, rebuilding muscle that had atrophied. Every step was a negotiation with pain that never quite went away. But Meredith had endured worse. She had watched her father waste away over 6 months. She had stitched Marines back together while bullets cracked overhead. She had been shot 7 times and kept breathing long enough for the medevac to arrive. This was just pain. Pain she could handle. By month 3, she was walking without assistance. By month 4, she was running. By month 5, she was cleared for return to duty. The Navy offered her a desk job, medical administration, safe, predictable, the kind of posting that would let her serve out her time without ever seeing combat again. She turned it down. The CSAR alert came at 0400 hours. Combat Search and Rescue. The mission every operator trained for and hoped never to fly. Navy FA-18 Super Hornet had taken ground fire during a close air support mission. Pilot ejected somewhere in Kunar province. Taliban forces were converging on the position. Team Havoc was wheels up in 20 minutes. But before the briefing ended, Blackwood pulled Meredith aside. His face was harder than usual, the face of a man about to deliver bad news. "There's something you need to know," he said quietly. "Intel confirms that Khalid Nazari is active in the Kunar region. The Shadow. The same man who put 7 rounds in you 8 months ago." Meredith's scars seemed to burn at the mention of his name. The 3 bullets still lodged in her body felt suddenly heavier. "He's recovered from the shoulder wound," Blackwood continued, "and according to our sources, he's been asking questions, offering money for information about the woman sniper who nearly killed him in Helmand. He's been describing you to every informant in the region. Small build, medical training, shoots like a professional. He knows what you look like through a scope." "He's still hunting me." "Yes." Blackwood met her eyes directly. "I'm giving you a choice, Callahan. You can sit this one out. No one would question it. No one would blame you. That man nearly killed you once. Going back into his territory, knowing he's out there looking for you. I'm going." "You're sure? This isn't about proving anything. You've already proven everything you need to prove." Meredith thought about the 7 bullets that had torn through her body, about the months of surgery and rehabilitation, about the promise she had broken and the one she had kept, about a pilot somewhere in those mountains who needed saving. "I'm sure, Master Sergeant." She checked her rifle, feeling the familiar weight settle into her hands. "Besides, Khalid and I have unfinished business. Might as well finish it." Blackwood studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, wheels up in 15. The helicopter dropped them into hell. The valley was crawling with Taliban, at least 40 fighters, maybe more, all converging on the pilot's emergency beacon like sharks drawn to blood. Lieutenant Commander Robert Carrington, 34 years old, wedding ring on his finger, 2 broken legs and possible internal injuries from the ejection. They found him wedged in a ravine, barely conscious. Meredith went to work immediately, splinting, IV access, morphine, stabilizing what she could, protecting what she couldn't. "You real or am I dead?" Carrington mumbled. "You're not dead, Commander. Not yet." But they were pinned, Taliban all around them, no clear extraction route. And then the sniper fire started. The first round hit the rock beside Morrison's head, close enough to draw blood from the stone fragments. Morrison dove for cover. "Contact, ridgeline east, 1,100 meters. Meredith's blood went cold. She knew that shooting. She knew that patience. She knew the flat crack of that rifle. "Khalid," she said. Morrison looked at her. "You sure?" "I've heard that rifle before, right before it put 7 rounds in me." Blackwood's voice came over the radio strained. "We've got a major problem. That sniper has us completely pinned. No one can move without getting their head taken off. Can you reach him, Morrison?" "Negative. Wrong angle. He's got perfect defilade from my position." Another crack. Another scream. Someone else was down. Morrison turned to Meredith. His eyes said everything his words didn't. "I know," she said. "I'm the only one with the angle." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She picked up her rifle. "Besides, he and I have unfinished business." 1,180 meters. In darkness. Uphill. Wind at 14 miles per hour. The longest shot she had ever attempted. Almost twice the distance of her shot in Helmand. Meredith found her position behind a rock outcropping that gave her a narrow sight line to the eastern ridge. Through the scope, she could see him. Khalid Nazari. The Shadow. He was in a different hide this time. More exposed. Less patient. He was shooting faster than before, taking risks he wouldn't normally take. Because this wasn't just a mission for him anymore. This was revenge. He knew she was out here somewhere. The woman who had nearly killed him in Helmand. the medic who had broken his legend, and he was looking for her. Their scopes crossed. For one impossible moment, they saw each other clearly. Two snipers across 1,180 meters of darkness. Meredith could see his face through the magnification. The scar on his shoulder where her bullet had torn through 8 months ago. The hatred burning in his eyes. The slight smile on his lips as he recognized her. He had been waiting for this, hunting for this. 8 months of searching, and finally she had come to him. He fired first. The round cracked past her ear close enough to draw blood from a rock fragment, close enough to leave a ringing that would last for days. Meredith didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't breathe. She watched through her scope as Khalid worked his bolt. Smooth, professional. He was already adjusting for his miss, already calculating her position, already preparing the shot that would end her life. She had maybe 2 seconds, not enough time to adjust properly, not enough time to calculate windage and elevation, not enough time to do anything by the book. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. The rifle doesn't judge your reasons. It only knows physics. And beneath that, another voice, her own, from 1,000 hours of training on a Kansas range. Trust yourself. Meredith fired from instinct, from muscle memory, from 10,000 repetitions on a Kansas range when she was 14 years old. From a gift her father had given her and a promise her mother had never understood. The rifle punched her shoulder. The bullet arced through darkness. 1,180 meters, almost 3 full seconds of flight time. Through the scope, she watched Khalid jerk, watched him slump, watched him fall from the ridge and disappear into the rocks below. This time, he didn't get back up. Morrison's voice came over the radio, quiet with something like awe. Target down, confirmed kill. Meredith lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. The shadow was dead. The hunt was over. The extraction took another 18 minutes. Carrington was loaded onto the helicopter. Morrison, Kowalski, the rest of Team Havoc. Meredith was the last one aboard. As the helicopter climbed into the dawn, she looked back at the ridge where Khalid had fallen. The shadow, 47 kills. The best sniper the Taliban had. 48 now, if you counted the woman who killed him. Morrison sat beside her. He didn't speak, just reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass casing he had shown her on the plane 8 months ago. Keep it, he said. You've earned it. Meredith took the casing. 24 years of history in a piece of brass the size of her thumb. Her father's legacy, her inheritance. What do I do now? She asked. You teach. Sterling wants you to run the SAR CDM program. 16 students. Corpsmen who want to learn to shoot, snipers who want to learn to heal. Morrison paused. You'll show them how to use both hands. I'm not ready. Your father thought he wasn't ready either. After Beirut, thought he wasn't qualified to teach something that came naturally to him. Morrison smiled. He was wrong. So are you. Colonel Sterling's office was sparse. Military, no frills. The man himself matched his environment. Lean, 50s, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen things and remembered them all. Corpsman Callahan, I've reviewed your file. Reviewed the after-action reports from Helmand and Kunar. He paused. I'm creating a new training program. Integrated Combat Medicine. SARC operators with advanced tactical marksmanship. You'll develop the curriculum, and you'll lead the first class. Sir, I don't have instructor qualifications. You have something more important. You've demonstrated the ability to transition between roles seamlessly. Medical care and precision shooting, both at the highest level. Not switching between them, integrating them. Sterling stood. The Navy needs that capability. The teams need it. I need instructors who can teach it. Sir, you're exactly what we need, Petty Officer. The question is whether you're ready to own it. Meredith thought about her mother, about the promise, about her father's voice in the wind, healing and protecting, both mercy, both necessary. I'm ready, sir. Good. You're promoted to Hospital Corpsman First Class, effective immediately. Class starts in 8 weeks. 16 students, mix of corpsmen and snipers. You'll teach them integration. A week later, a package arrived at the base. Inside was a photograph, Beckett Hartley, standing on his prosthetic leg, arm around a woman in a white dress. Melissa. The wedding had been small, just family and a few Marines from the unit. But Hartley's smile was enormous. A hand-painted sign hung behind them. Doc Callahan saved this groom. A note was tucked into the frame. Doc, you promised you'd get me home to marry her. You kept your promise. I'm walking, I'm breathing, I'm married to the love of my life. Colt Prewitt was my best man. Lungs working fine. He says he owes you his life. So do I. When I tell people how I lost my leg, I always tell them the same thing. A woman half my size saved my life with a medical kit and a sniper rifle. They never believe me. But it's true, thank you, Doc, for everything. Gree Megfess. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you know where to find us. Meredith pinned the photograph to her wall next to her father's picture and the brass casing from Beirut. 3 images, 3 reminders, 3 reasons why both hands mattered. The phone rang at 2200 hours. Eleanor's number. 3 months since their last conversation, 3 months of silence. Meredith almost didn't answer. Mom? I've been reading about you. Her mother's voice was different, softer. There was an article in the Navy Times about a new training program. Your name was mentioned prominently. I didn't know there was an article. The pilot you saved, Carrington, he did an interview. He said a corpsman named Callahan shot a sniper at over 1,000 meters to save the extraction team, then treated his injuries while under fire. Eleanor paused. He called you a hero. Meredith said nothing. I've been thinking, Eleanor continued, about what you said, about choosing between breaking a promise and watching people die. Mom, let me finish. A pause, a deep breath. I talked to that man, Morrison. He came to see me last week. He did. He told me about Beirut, about your father, about the 6 men he killed to save 300. Eleanor's voice caught. He told me something your father said to him afterward, something about both hands. I know. Morrison told me the same thing. He also told me something your father said to him in the hospital after the cancer diagnosis, before you and I came to visit, something I never knew. Meredith felt her heart stop. Your father said, don't let Eleanor make her choose. Scout needs both. Make sure she understands that. The words hit Meredith like a physical force. Her father had known. Even dying, he had known what was coming, and he had tried to prepare the way. Why didn't Morrison tell me sooner? Because he wanted me to be the one to say it. Another pause. I was wrong, Meredith. Not about worrying. I'll always worry. But about making you promise. About trying to separate you from the skills your father gave you. Mom, your father knew you better than I did. He knew what you would become. He knew you would need both hands. Eleanor's voice broke, and I tried to take one of them away from you. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. You were grieving. You were scared. You didn't want to lose me the way you lost him. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it understandable. Silence, then. I'm proud of you, Meredith. Your father would be too. More proud than I can say. The words hit her like a wave. 8 months of guilt, of second-guessing, of wondering if she had done the right thing. All of it dissolving in her mother's acceptance. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now tell me about this program you're starting. 6 months later, Meredith stood in front of Class 24 at the SARC Training Center in Coronado. 16 faces looked back at her, 8 corpsmen trying to learn to shoot, 8 snipers trying to learn to heal. All of them skeptical. She understood. She had been skeptical too. I'm HM1 Callahan, she said. Some of you know me. Most don't. I'm here to teach you something that most people think is impossible, being excellent at 2 things instead of 1. A hand went up. Marine Scout Sniper, Sergeant Parker. With respect, instructor, isn't that just dividing focus? Being mediocre at both instead of expert at one? Good question. Meredith picked up a rifle with one hand and a medical kit with the other. Who here can stabilize a femoral hemorrhage in under 90 seconds? 4 hands went up, all corpsmen. Who can make an 800-meter shot in crosswind? 4 different hands, all snipers. Now, who can do both in the same mission? Under fire? While wounded? Silence. That's what we're here to learn. Not dividing focus, expanding capability. She set both items down. My father taught me to shoot when I was 10. The Navy taught me to heal when I was 18. For 6 years, I thought I had to choose. Then I learned the truth. She looked at each face. The best operators don't specialize narrowly. They integrate broadly. They become complete. Over the next 6 months, she taught them everything her father had taught her and everything she had learned on her own. How to transition from treating a sucking chest wound to engaging a target at 900 yards. How to keep your hands steady for surgery after the adrenaline dump of combat. How to read wind while monitoring vital signs. How to carry both kits without compromising either. 16 students became 13, then 12. 2 quit. 1 failed medical standards. 1 washed out on marksmanship quals. But the ones who stayed learned to do both. A phrase started circulating among the teams. A motto one of the students had coined. Heal when you can. Fight when you must. It showed up on patches, on coffee mugs, spray painted on range targets. It became the unofficial creed of the program. On a cool evening in late September, Meredith was running final drills when a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the training field. Eleanor Callahan, gray-haired now, older, but standing straight, standing proud. Meredith called for a break and walked to meet her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to see for myself." Eleanor looked at the students, at the equipment, at the program her daughter had built. "Morrison told me, but I needed to see it." "See what?" "This." Eleanor gestured at the training field. "What you've created, what you've become." They walked together toward the range. 16 students were running integrated drills, treating simulated casualties while engaging pop-up targets. "Your father would be amazed," Eleanor said quietly. "You think so?" "I know so. He always knew you would do something like this. He just didn't know what it would look like." Eleanor stopped walking, turned to face her daughter. "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. You're here now. That's what matters. I brought you something." Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a familiar object. Her father's rifle. The M40 he had used in training her. The one that had sat in the closet of the Kansas farmhouse for 9 years. "Mom, it belongs with you. It always did. I should never have made you leave it behind." Meredith took the rifle. The weight of it was exactly as she remembered, exactly as her father had taught her to expect. "There's something else." Eleanor pulled out a folded letter. "I found this in his things after. I've been holding on to it, waiting for the right time." Meredith unfolded the paper. Her father's handwriting, strong and clear and precise. "Scout, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if your mother gave you this letter, she finally understood. I know you made her a promise, and I know you'll probably keep it for a while. That's okay. You need to find your own way. But someday something will happen. Something that forces you to choose between the promise and the people you care about. When that day comes, remember what I taught you. Both hands. Not one or the other. Both. Healing and protecting aren't opposites. They're 2 sides of the same coin. 2 ways of expressing the same love. 2 means to the same end. Keeping the people you care about alive. You have a gift. Don't waste it. Use it to save lives and to protect them. That's not a contradiction. That's completion. I love you, Scout. I'll be watching. I'll be proud." Dad Meredith read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and pressed it to her heart. "He knew," she whispered. "He always knew." Eleanor put her arm around her daughter. "He just couldn't tell you himself. So he told Morrison, and he told this letter, and he trusted that someday, when you were ready, you would understand." That evening, after Eleanor had returned to her hotel, Meredith drove to the rifle range alone. The sun was setting over Coronado. The sky was painted in shades of orange and gold, the same colors that used to fill the Kansas sky when her father taught her to shoot. She set up at the 1,000-yard line. Her father's rifle, her father's ammunition, her father's daughter. She placed his photograph beside the spotting scope. His face looked back at her, strong, certain, patient. She placed the brass casing Morrison had given her next to the photograph. 24 years of history and a piece of metal. She placed his letter beside the casing. the words she would carry for the rest of her life. Then she settled into position, slow breath in, even slower out. Heart rate dropping, 65 beats per minute, 60, 55. The crosshairs found the target. She fired, bullseye, worked the bolt, fired again, bullseye, 5 shots, 5 perfect hits. When she was done, she sat up and looked at her father's photograph. I get it now, Dad, she said quietly. Both hands. Not one or the other, both. That's what you tried to tell me. That's what I finally understand. The wind picked up slightly. In it, she could almost hear his voice. That's my girl, Scout. That's my girl. She packed up her gear. Both kits, both purposes. The sun had set. The stars were coming out over Coronado. Tomorrow, 12 students would wake up for another day of training, another day of learning to integrate instead of divide, another day of becoming complete. Meredith stood at the edge of the range and looked out at the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Somewhere out there, people needed saving. Somewhere out there, people needed protecting. She was ready for both. Heal when you can. Fight when you must. Medical kit in her left hand. Rifle in her right. Both hands. Both forms of mercy. Both necessary. And for the first time since her father's funeral, Meredith Callahan was exactly who she was meant to be. Complete. The end. In memory of all those who serve with both hands, the healers who protect, the warriors who save, and everyone who refuses to choose between compassion and courage. Heal when you can. Fight when you must.